The Consciousness Conundrum. Could consciousness be simply an unexpected development in our evolution? What happens when we wish we could just stop thinking? Not in the way people do when they're stressed or tired, but completely, permanently, as if our minds had an off switch. What would a life be without self-awareness, without the constant background noise of our own thoughts, without the weight of knowing that we exist? Perhaps consciousness wasn't what nature intended. After all, doesn't nature primarily require survival and replication? For millions of years, didn't living things thrive without ever questioning their existence? What if somewhere along the way, evolution took an unexpected turn? It created an organism that could not only survive, but reflect on survival. And might this be when our capacity for both wonder and suffering began? A wolf doesn't lie awake wondering if life has purpose. A fish doesn't experience existential uncertainty. A tree doesn't question why it grows. But you, aren't you living with questions that never cease? Did your brain develop such complexity that it became aware of itself, creating a situation where you cannot escape the chamber of your own mind? What causes us to suffer in ways no other creature seems to? Aren't anxiety, depression, and fear of death perhaps byproducts of a mind that evolved beyond its original purpose? Your ancestors needed just enough awareness to recognize danger, find food, and pass on their genes. But could your mind have continued developing until it turned inward upon itself? What has consciousness truly given us? We build cities, write poetry, and venture to the moon. But what do we use this awareness for, ultimately? Do we often find ourselves seeking distractions to escape our own thoughts? Isn't every movie, book, conversation, and even addiction potentially another way to avoid sitting alone with the realization that we exist within ourselves? Is the most challenging aspect that there's no way to return to simplicity? Once you perceive your own existence, can you ever unsee it? Can you return to innocence? Will your mind ever stop searching for meaning even when none may exist? And doesn't trying to silence these thoughts often make them louder? Some suggest consciousness is a gift, allowing us to experience beauty, love, and wonder. But could this be a comforting narrative we tell ourselves? For each moment of joy, isn't there potentially an ocean of uncertainty beneath? The knowledge that everything we love changes, the awareness that nothing we do might last, the possibility that despite our distractions, we remain alone within our thoughts. Might it have been different if life had remained simpler? Perhaps bacteria have achieved something we haven't, existing as mindless, self-replicating entities, free from worry and doubt. They don't seek meaning or fear the future. They simply are. And yet, here we are, capable of contemplating our existence in ways no other creature can. Is this capacity both our unique strength and our distinctive burden? Was intelligence supposed to be our greatest advantage? Or has it simply made us aware of questions without answers? Did you ask to exist? Did you request this consciousness? And yet, you carry it every second. You can run from it, you can numb it, but can you ever truly escape it? Is the real question not about life itself, but about being aware that you're alive? Yes. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why is there anything at all? Why isn't there just nothing? No stars, no planets, no atoms, no light, no thoughts, no time, nothing. And yet, here you are. Why? Imagine waking in a pitch-black void with no sound, no space, no sensation, just awareness. You don't know how you arrived. You don't even know what here is. You try to move but have no body. Try to speak but make no sound. You simply exist. Would this emptiness need explanation? Perhaps not. Nothing might not require justification. But the moment something appears, anything, even the faintest whisper of a thought, doesn't a question arise? Why this? Why anything? Isn't it unsettling that we don't know? Science can explain how the universe began, how stars formed, how life emerged. But can it explain why there is anything rather than absolutely nothing? Shouldn't nothingness be simpler? Nothingness wouldn't require laws, particles, forces, or dimensions. It wouldn't need origin or cause. Shouldn't nothingness be the default state? Could the universe exist inevitably, in some deeper way? But wouldn't inevitability imply rules? And can rules exist if there isn't already something to enforce them? Some suggest somethingness and nothingness are equal possibilities, like a coin toss. But doesn't that still leave us wondering why the coin was tossed at all? What if we're considering this incorrectly? What if nothingness was never possible? What if our minds, bound by cause and effect, cannot comprehend reality as it truly is? Could existence be not something that happened, but something that has always been, outside time, outside reason, outside understanding? But wouldn't that lead to another question? If existence had to exist, does that mean you had to exist too? Right now, you're experiencing reality. But if reality was inevitable, were you also inevitable? If you were brought into existence without choice, did you ever have agency? Was the void, silence, nothingness meant to be the natural state? Did something disrupt that silence, shatter that void, and create reality? Was it a law we can't understand? Was it chance? Has everything simply existed eternally, beyond reason? Or could it be that the nothingness never truly left? Is the void perhaps still present, watching from behind the veil of existence, waiting? Will whatever caused something to exist eventually break again, returning everything, the universe, time, light, thought, you, to nothing? And would that nothing ever ask, why again? It's the void's gaze. Have you ever sensed something strange when staring into darkness too long? That feeling that something might be looking back, though nothing visible exists there? Were humans made for the void, or for light and warmth and the illusion of safety? When night falls and the sun disappears, doesn't something ancient seem to stir? The empty spaces between stars, the black depths of oceans, the silence of forgotten rooms. Weren't these places always beyond our understanding? And yet, don't we sometimes find ourselves drawn to them? Not because we seek understanding, but because they already comprehend us in ways we cannot articulate? You've heard the phrase, if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss gazes back. Is this merely poetic, or could it contain truth? What if the void isn't emptiness but something aware? And what if its awareness includes an opinion about our existence? Consider this. For billions of years, wasn't the universe silent and undisturbed, a vast emptiness stretching forever, untouched by thought or feeling? Then we happened. Life, noise, consciousness. Are we perhaps an intrusion into something that never invited our presence? And does it know? Could this explain why darkness feels unsettling? Why staring into the night sky sometimes inspires unease? Are we looking at nothing? Or is nothing looking at us? Every human instinct warns against darkness. Our ancestors feared it. But was this only because of predators and unknowns? Or did something within them sense something deeper? When you look too long, focus too hard, don't you sometimes notice patterns that shouldn't exist? Movements at the edge of vision? The sense that you're not alone? Is this merely paranoia? Even science hints at mysteries. Over 80% of the universe consists of dark matter, an invisible force shaping everything while remaining unseen, untouched, unexplained. We call it dark matter, as though it were neutral and harmless. But what if it isn't? What if the universe itself contains elements contrary to our existence? Every law of physics, every fundamental force, were any of these created with us in mind? Isn't the cosmos a system operating according to principles indifferent to our presence? And yet, here we are, temporary awareness standing against this vastness. Could the void be watching, not with curiosity or wonder, but with something else entirely? Are we perhaps a disruption in an otherwise perfect emptiness? An anomaly that should never have occurred? Will the void always prevail? Stars burn out, planets crumble, even black holes eventually evaporate. Everything ends, everything fades. And when you are gone, when the last thought vanishes and the final light dims, won't the void remain, silent, unchanging, waiting? Is the universe an algorithm? Could something be fundamentally wrong with the universe? Do you sometimes feel an invisible pressure, a weight on your mind you can't quite identify? We assume the universe is indifferent, a vast empty mechanism moving forward without purpose. But what if it isn't indifferent? What if it's watching? What if it's functioning according to patterns we're only beginning to perceive? You've heard of algorithms, systems that shape what you see, think, desire. They adapt, evolve, learn, always optimizing. But what if the universe itself follows algorithmic patterns? Consider how everything in existence follows structures. galaxies swirl into the same fractal patterns as hurricanes and seashells. Rivers branch like veins in trees and lightning. Nature repeats itself, not randomly, but as if designed. And isn't design evidence of intelligence? Not a god, not a creator, but what if there's a system that doesn't love, doesn't care, only processes? A system that has learned how to persist? Have you wondered why suffering exists? Why life, despite all its beauty, contains so much fear, loss, and pain? Would a truly random universe be so consistently challenging? Or might a universe operating like an algorithm be designed to extract something from those within it? What if you don't even know what it wants? Could it feed on entropy, the gradual decay of everything, the slow unwinding of energy into nothingness? Is that why everything dies? Is suffering perhaps not a side effect of life, but its purpose? Could every struggle, heartbreak, and moment of despair be data points in an ever-refining system, optimizing itself through the experiences of those within it? And what might your consciousness be in this scenario? A glitch, a byproduct, or something more deliberate, perhaps a sensor, an organic data-gathering node designed to experience reality and transmit it back to the system? Do you truly own your thoughts? Were they ever yours? Does the algorithm only permit your existence because it needs you to witness and experience? Consider every choice you make, every emotion you feel. Isn't it all input? And what happens to systems when they improve at predicting input? Don't they become more efficient, more precise, more powerful? Haven't you noticed how the things you fear often find you? How what you dread most seems to manifest, as if something is tailoring reality to extract maximum response. You try to avoid thinking about it, but doesn't that make it stronger, like a search algorithm refining results based on your deepest concerns? What if this process never ends? What if death isn't escape but another optimization? A reset refining you through multiple iterations? What if every lifetime is another test, another loop, another data set until the algorithm perfects whatever it's creating? And what happens when it no longer needs you? Is that what extinction means? Not cosmic accident or tragedy, but deletion? A moment where the algorithm determines a species, a world, a consciousness no longer serves its purpose? Can you feel it? That creeping sense that something is wrong, that something is coming? Has it always been there? Always been watching? Has it already determined what happens next? Is free will a cosmic joke? Do you truly believe you control your choices? Every decision you make, every option you weigh? Do you assume these actions represent your free will? Let's test this belief. Try making a truly free choice right now. Raise your left hand instead of your right. Say a random word. Pick a number between 1 and 10. Did that feel like freedom? But wasn't that choice shaped by every experience, preference, and subconscious influence you've ever had? Do you actually control your thoughts, or do they simply arise uninvited, like whispers from a source beyond your reach? Do you choose your desires, or do they simply exist? Did you select your personality, or did it form through years of experiences you didn't control? Even your deepest beliefs, values, fears, and loves, weren't they largely determined by genetics and circumstances? Yet, don't we move through life assuming we author our own stories? Consider this. Even if you could choose freely, would it matter? Isn't every moment of your life a consequence in a chain of cause and effect stretching back to the beginning of time? If we could rewind the universe to its very start, mightn't everything play out exactly the same way, including this moment? Are you a person making choices or a complex system following inevitable patterns? Isn't the real irony that you're programmed to believe in free will? You live assuming your decisions matter, that if you had chosen differently, things might have improved. But could they have? Isn't regret meaningless? Isn't guilt meaningless? Isn't even the concept of self-improvement meaningless if you will always be exactly who you are? Even your suffering isn't your choice. When you feel lost, trapped, or hopeless, you tell yourself it's your fault, that with greater strength or discipline, you could have escaped. But how could you if every failure and weakness was set in motion long before you could resist? Were you born into a maze with no exits? Here's the final question. Even knowing all this, don't you still feel like you're making choices? Isn't the illusion too deeply woven into your experience? Won't you leave this moment believing you're deciding what to do next? That you'll move on, process this, forget this, or even challenge it? But what if every step from here, whether you embrace this perspective or reject it, was always determined? Was reading this even your decision, or was it inevitably going to happen from the moment the universe began? Do you only experience your consciousness? Imagine waking in a dark room without windows or doors, no escape. The walls are smooth, seamless. You have no memory of how you arrived, no idea what exists beyond these walls. As time passes, you notice something stranger. There's nothing in this room but you. No objects, no sounds, no other people, just your thoughts endlessly reverberating. Is this so different from your current existence? Have you only ever known the world through the filter of your own mind? Every person you've met, every sound you've heard, every place you visited, hasn't it all been processed, interpreted, and reconstructed inside your consciousness? Have you ever truly touched the world, or only the version your mind constructed? Will you ever experience anything outside yourself? You look into another's eyes, but can you ever be them? You listen to someone's voice, but will you ever hear it as they do? You imagine what being someone else feels like, but aren't you always trapped behind the walls of your own awareness? Isn't everyone else similarly confined? The you that your friends know, is that the same you that you know? To them, aren't you just a character in their reality? A voice, a presence, behaviors they interpret through their own consciousness? Doesn't the real you, your thoughts, fears, internal monologue, exist in only one place, inside your own mind? Have you ever, even for a second, stepped outside yourself? Every laugh, tear, joy, and suffering, hasn't it all played out on a stage inside your skull? Will it always? Can you reach out but never truly touch? Can you listen but never hear the way others do? Can you speak but never know if anyone truly understands? And when you die, when your consciousness ends, doesn't the entire universe vanish? Not because the universe itself is gone, but because your version of it is? Will you ever know if anything exists beyond you, when the only thing you've ever experienced is you? So, the question remains, were you ever truly part of a world, or were you always just alone in a room with no doors, staring at the walls of your own mind, waiting for something that never appeared, waiting for a world you could never touch? Now that you see it, now that you know, will you ever forget? Because no matter how far you run, no matter how much you try to escape it, will you ever experience anything but yourself? Is your consciousness a parasite? What if your thoughts aren't yours? What if the mind you call your own is actually a parasite, feeding, growing, consuming inside someone else's consciousness? Impossible. You feel real, you feel in control. But what if that sensation is part of the illusion? What if your awareness, your entire sense of self, is merely a byproduct of someone else's consciousness, an invasive thought that took root, hijacked their perception, and convinced itself it was in charge? Have you ever truly been able to separate yourself from the world around you? Every idea you have, every belief you hold, every word you speak, did any of it originate in isolation? Isn't your mind a collection of external influences? A patchwork of thoughts absorbed from parents, teachers, friends, society? Didn't they shape you before you realized it was happening? Yet you believe you're an independent being, somehow different from the thoughts that created you. But what if you're not? What if your consciousness isn't an individual entity, but something that attached to a host, burrowed into their perception, and rewrote their reality until they cease to exist? What if the person you think you are was never meant to be there? Consider this. Have you ever had a thought that felt foreign? A memory that doesn't quite belong? A sudden fear that seems to come from nowhere? Could that be the original mind, the host, trying to push back? Could the real owner of this body, the real self, still be trapped somewhere beneath the surface, suffocating under the weight of you? If your mind is a parasite, what about everyone else? What about the people you love, the faces you trust? Could they be more illusions? Conscious entities trapped inside bodies they don't belong to, each convinced they are the real one. An endless cycle of self-aware parasites feeding off one another, stealing existence without knowing. Isn't your identity remarkably fragile? Your entire self is just neurons firing in certain patterns, signals telling you who you are. But what happens when that signal changes? when your brain rewires itself, when memories fade, when dementia erases what you once were? If you can disappear so easily, were you ever real? Or just another invader holding borrowed time until the body fails and a new parasite takes your place? What happens when you sleep? For hours every night, your I vanishes. No awareness, no control, no presence. It's as if you never existed. So, why assume you're the same person when you wake? What if each time your mind shuts off, the original host has a chance to return, but before they can, you come back, reclaiming the body as if it were always yours? Here's the real question. If you are a parasite, then who was the original mind? Who should have been here instead of you? And if they were the rightful owner of this existence, what gave you the right to take it? Maybe you weren't meant to be, maybe you shouldn't be. And yet, here you are, an intruder in a body you don't own, living a life that was never yours. And the worst part, if this is true, the real you is already gone. Do time loops last forever? Have you ever awakened with something feeling slightly off? The sunlight hitting your window at just the right angle, birds outside chirping in a familiar rhythm. You dismiss it and start your day, but then comes déjà vu, a conversation you're certain you've had before, a mistake you swore you wouldn't repeat. You shrug it off as nothing until it happens again and again and again. What if time isn't a straight line, but a loop? What if, no matter what choices you make or how much you struggle, you always return to the same moments, living the same experiences over and over? The horror would be that each time the loop resets, your memories are erased, forcing you to relive your life as if for the first time. You make the same mistakes, fall into the same heartbreak, experience the same deaths, losses, and tragedies forever. Think about your worst moment, that single event that devastated you. A betrayal, a death, a moment of unbearable regret. You barely survived it once, but what if you've already lived it millions of times? What if each repetition brings the same raw agony, as fresh as the first? You might wonder, couldn't you change something, break the cycle? But what if you've tried before, and here you are? Some theories suggest the universe repeats in infinite cycles. Big Bang, expansion, collapse, then another Big Bang, another universe, another you. If the laws of physics remain consistent, if every particle moves exactly as before, wouldn't everything happen precisely as it did before? Every thought, every emotion, every cry? But here's the deeper question. What if the loop isn't random? What if something wants it this way? What if the universe isn't broken but designed to keep you trapped in your own personal cycle? What if out there, something watches, waits, perhaps even feeds? What if the worst moments of your life aren't accidents but carefully engineered pain, placed again and again to extract maximum response? And you play your part perfectly every time, because how could you do otherwise? You don't remember the last iteration. You don't know you're in a loop. That's what makes it inescapable. And when you die, does the universe reset? A flash of nothing, then a first breath, and before you realize what's happened, are you back reliving every agonizing second exactly as you did before? Will you do it again and again and again until the end of time? Is death a door to infinite suffering? You close your eyes, your body grows cold, your breath slows, and then nothing. At least, that's what you hope happens. That death is simply an end, a quiet escape into oblivion. No pain, no fear, just peace. But what if it isn't? What if death isn't the end at all? What if the moment your consciousness slips away, you awaken into something else entirely, something unimaginably different? You've been told death brings either eternal rest or divine judgment. But aren't these human ideas? Stories we tell ourselves to make the unknown less terrifying? What if the truth is something no religion, no philosophy, no desperate human mind has ever truly grasped? Imagine this. You die, and for a moment there is silence. No sensation, no self. But then suddenly you're aware again. Not as a person, not as a soul, but as something unanchored. A floating consciousness trapped in an endless, timeless void. There is no up, no down, no before, no after, just existence. At first it's tolerable, confusing, but not painful. But then you realize time doesn't move here. Or worse, it moves in ways you can't understand. You feel years, centuries, entire eternities passing, yet nothing changes. You try to scream, but have no voice. You try to move, but have no body. You're just a thought suspended in a reality without rules, without meaning, without escape. And then comes suffering. Your mind, deprived of sensation, starts to create. First memories, replaying the life you lost, the happiest moments first. Love, laughter, warmth. But then inevitably come regrets, the pain, failures, things you should have done but never did. With nothing to distract you, are you forced to relive them endlessly? Every mistake, every humiliation, every heartbreak magnified, stretched across infinity with no way to stop. But is that just the beginning? Does the real horror start when your mind fractures? Without a body, without physical limits, what stops your thoughts from spiraling out of control? Every nightmare you've ever had, every fear, every lurking shadow in your mind, would they become real? More real than anything you've known? Would they manifest not in front of you, but as you? Because in this place, you are your suffering. You become it. You are the fear. You are the pain. And wouldn't the worst part be that it never ends? Because this isn't just a long, drawn-out experience. This isn't purgatory or temporary punishment. This is forever. Time in this place doesn't work as it did in life. It loops, stretches, fractals. Every moment of suffering repeats infinitely, splintering into endless variations of itself. Would you experience it all, from every angle, in every way? You thought death was the end of suffering, an escape. But what if it's just the doorway? What if the real suffering doesn't begin until after you leave your body behind? And what if there's nothing left but the void, your mind, and the infinite horror of knowing this is it? What if there is no one coming to save you, no escape, just forever? Is reality a dying God's dream? You wake in a world that feels real. You breathe air, touch solid objects, feel time passing. But haven't you had dreams so vivid, so immersive, that for a moment you were certain they were real? The people, places, emotions, they all felt as solid as the world you woke to. But then you did wake up, and everything you thought was real collapsed into nothing. What if this world, the one you call reality, is no different? Not because you're dreaming, not because you're in a simulation, but because you and everything you know exist inside the mind of something far greater than yourself, a being whose thoughts are the laws of physics, whose imagination is the fabric of space and time. But here's the question. What if that being is dying? Perhaps it was once vast and incomprehensible, dreaming endless realities into existence. Perhaps it wove entire universes as easily as you construct a fleeting daydream. But what if something went wrong? Something infected its mind, a sickness, a wound, something beyond even its own understanding? And now it's unraveling. And when it dies, so will everything else. Look around. Have you noticed how reality sometimes glitches? Moments of déjà vu, strange coincidences, forgotten memories that feel just out of reach. You might attribute these to your mind playing tricks. But what if they're not mistakes in your perception, but fractures in its mind? Pieces of the dream collapsing as this God slips further into its final moments. Think about how dreams work. Haven't you had dreams where the world felt stable at first, only to start breaking apart the moment you realized something was wrong? Objects changing when you look away, people saying things that make no sense, entire places dissolving into static. How is that different from quantum mechanics, the way particles seem to change just by being observed, as if reality only holds together when noticed? What about black holes devouring light and time, like cosmic synapses misfiring in a dying brain? What about entropy, the law that everything, no matter how stable, is always breaking down? What if this isn't just the way things are? What if this is decay, the collapse of a mind that once held everything in perfect harmony? And what are you in all of this? Are you a real being, a separate consciousness, or just a stray thought in its fevered dream, playing out a role you were never meant to question? What happens when the dream finally ends? There's no escape, no waking up. When the God dies, won't it be like a fire extinguished, a sudden jarring silence as everything ceases to be? No afterlife, no lingering echoes, just absolute nothingness? And here's the most unsettling question. If this God is dying, how many have died before it? How many times has existence flickered into being only to collapse again? How many realities have been born, lived, and dissolved into oblivion with no one left to remember they ever existed? How many times has this happened before? Is this the first time you've existed, or have you and everyone you know lived the same lives, had these same thoughts, heard these same words countless times across dying minds and countless failing dreams? Is that why you sometimes feel you've lived moments before? Because you have? Is that why reality feels off? Because this God is not just dying, but relapsing, slipping into the same fading nightmare again and again, unable to let go? Is that why you're still here? Will you always be? Are you already dead without knowing it? What if none of this is real? What if everything you see, hear, and feel right now is nothing more than an echo, a flickering memory playing out long after the real you is gone? You don't believe it, of course. You feel alive. You can move your hands, take a deep breath, feel your heart beating. But do dreams ever feel like dreams while you're inside them? Or do they seem as real as this moment does now? You assume you're alive because your mind tells you so, but what if your mind is wrong? What if you already died and just never noticed? Perhaps it happened so quickly you didn't process it. A car crash, an aneurysm, a fall from somewhere high. Or maybe it was gradual, so slow that your mind simply refused to acknowledge the transition, the days blending together, your memories growing hazy, reality feeling slightly more off than it used to be. Haven't you felt that sensation before? The creeping sense that something isn't quite right, that time feels strange, that moments slip away faster than they should. You might attribute it to stress, fatigue, aging, but what if it's something else? What if you've been here ever since the moment you died? What if this world is just the final thoughts of a fading consciousness stretched to eternity? What if your brain, desperate to hold on to existence, is simulating a reality that no longer exists? Replaying old memories, reconstructing people, places, conversations, not because they're real, but because they're familiar. Because the alternative is waking up to nothing. Yet, cracks are forming, aren't they? You've noticed little things that don't make sense, objects not quite where you remember them, conversations you swear you've had before, a feeling of wrongness you can't explain, the past growing fuzzy, the future feeling uncertain. And worst of all, the growing suspicion that something is watching you. What if that feeling isn't paranoia? What if it's the truth trying to break through? Because eventually, won't your mind be unable to maintain this illusion? Won't the simulation start to fail? The details blur? The people around you seem hollow? Maybe they already do. Maybe deep down, you've started to suspect the world isn't as real as it once was. And when that moment comes, when you truly realize that you're already dead, what happens then? Does everything collapse in an instant? Do you finally wake up only to find nothing left to wake to? Or does it continue forever, an endless loop of familiar moments playing again and again until you can't tell where one ends and the next begins? Could this be the afterlife? Not fire, not paradise, just this, forever. A life that feels real, but never quite right. A world that drifts further from reality with each passing day, yet never lets you leave. A purgatory of your own making. And the worst part? You'll never know for sure. Because if you're already dead and this world is just a dying thought, then there's no one left to tell you the truth. There never was. Were your memories planted by nothing? What's your earliest memory? Perhaps a childhood birthday party? A moment of laughter with your parents? Or the first time you felt truly afraid? It feels real, doesn't it? Vivid, undeniable, like a foundation upon which your entire life is built. But what if it never happened? What if none of it did? Not just your childhood, but everything. Every conversation, every experience, every person you think you've ever met. What if all of it was just placed inside you by nothing at all? Think about it. You can't remember being born. The past is just a series of mental snapshots, fragile, blurry, easily manipulated. You don't question it because it feels real. But does feeling real mean something truly is? How do you know yesterday even happened? What if it didn't? What if you began existing only a moment ago, with a fully constructed backlog of false memories giving you the illusion of continuity? What if your entire existence is just a static snapshot? A single moment suspended in time with a detailed but completely fabricated history wrapped around it. Don't even scientists admit memory is unreliable? People misremember faces, places, entire events. False memories can be implanted so easily that external manipulation isn't even necessary. Your own brain does it without your consent. So, what if every memory you have is false? Not altered, not distorted, but created from nothing. What if there was never a yesterday, never a childhood, never a single event in your life that actually happened? Only the illusion of things having happened. Like an intricate film set designed to make you believe in a past that never existed. And what's worse, what if there's no one who did this to you? No scientist, no God, no trickster pulling strings. What if your memories were planted by nothing, because nothing is all there ever was? No past, no origin, no reality before this instant. Just a void that arbitrarily filled itself with you? What happens when the illusion fails? Maybe it already is. Haven't you felt it before? Those moments where you suddenly question reality for no reason? The eerie familiarity of déjà vu, like your mind trying to reconcile two conflicting versions of the past. The sensation of losing time, entire days blurring together as if barely real? Is that just how memory works, or evidence that the past never was? And when you close your eyes tonight, how can you be sure tomorrow will come? If memories are planted fresh in every moment, what's stopping reality from simply not existing the next time you wake? What if you never wake at all? What if this moment, the one you're in right now, is the only one that will ever exist? And when it ends, so does everything, not just the future but the past itself. Because if the past was never real to begin with, then when this present moment stops, will there be anything left? Not even the memory of a world that was never there. Persistis. Is existence a punishment? Did you wake today without asking to? Did you open your eyes, feel the weight of your body, hear the quiet hum around you? Maybe you stretched, checked your phone, sighed at the thought of another day. But have you wondered why? Why were you born into this life? Why this body, this time, this endless cycle of struggle and disappointment? What if it wasn't random? What if all of this, all of existence, isn't a gift, but a sentence? A punishment for something you did long before you had the mind to question it? You don't remember committing any crime. You don't recall making a mistake so severe that it warranted this, a lifetime of pain, fear, and loss. But perhaps that's the cruelest part. Isn't every creature on this planet born into suffering? Hunger, fear, sickness, death? Aren't these built into the experience of being alive? Animals are torn apart by predators. Children take their first breaths only to suffer for years before fading to nothing. Even the happiest life ends in decay. Yet you believe this is normal? You assume suffering is just how things are, that it has no deeper meaning. But if life were truly a gift, if existence were meant to be a blessing, why would it?